another edition of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World. I'm Professor Guernsey. I'm joined by Dr. Jeff Hayman. And Jeff, today we wanted to talk about the supply curve, and I see you have a supply curve listed there. Talk to us about the law of supply and why is the supply curve upwardly sloping?
Yeah, so this contrasts with the demand curve, which was we saw the last video series was downward sloping. The supply curve slopes upward sloping for a wide variety of reasons. Well, let's define that. The law of supply, the fact that it slopes upward, simply says that as the price increases, the quantity supplied, the amount that would be produced, will increase as well. At some level of price increase, you'll get a springing forth of supply. We call that the law of supply. But the question then becomes, why is that the case? Why does it take a higher price to get people to be willing to produce more? And certainly we know that there's some range of production where a producer will produce at the same price. Initially, when the supply curve is first being created, you can imagine a firm that's just getting started would actually be able to produce at a lower cost for a higher volume because they could produce more efficiently. But that's not depicted on the curve. Why? Because that downward sloping initial part is not an area which is going to be sustainable. They would always want to produce at that level. They're always going to be producing on the upward sloping portion of their marginal cost curve. So we're dealing with this upward sloping, and then we have to ask why. And there are a lot of reasons why. And one of the reasons is because of this idea that certainly in the short run, there's for a firm to expand production, we have usually at least some factors of production in the short run that would be fixed. So you can imagine if you've got your franchisee and you have more people wanting to come into your Subway's line and produce more sandwiches, well, you can hire another worker, and you're going to get some additional sandwich output with that additional worker. But that additional output is going to increase at a decreasing rate. We call that diminishing marginal returns because some part of the process is fixed. And for them to spend more, they're going to have to spend more money on that. That's one aspect. But I think a more fundamental aspect that we need to think about in economics, because economics is all about trade-offs, is every factor of production that goes into producing any of this amount. So if we're going to expand production from quantity 2 to quantity 6, we're demanding an increased price. The reason it requires this increased price is a firm has to bid away resources from some alternative use. And those alternative uses have value as well. And those are going to come at an increasing cost. The more we try to produce of any one good, that means the less and increasingly less that we can produce of other goods. And so that takes away resources that have high value uses elsewhere, and to bid them away in the production of this particular use, I've got it just as a general supply curve. We could make it any market curve. It's going to take us to bid away from some other use. And so those other uses have value, and that's why the supply curve generally slopes upward.
So the demand curve generally slopes downward, supply curve slopes upward. Probably a topic for another conversation once you see them on the same graph.
But let me point out, because I'm glad you just said that, both of them feature the issue of opportunity cost and trade-off. For the consumer on the demand curve was simply because the opportunity cost of lost consumption, foregone consumption. In this particular case, the producer is looking at an opportunity cost in other things that could have been produced, whether by them or other producers, because of the alternative uses of labor, capital, et cetera.
Great. And then I imagine you also talk about the difference at some point, maybe not right now, the difference between moving along a supply curve and a shift of supply, just like we did with demand.
Well, we can do that in just a moment.
Okay. Very good. All right, well, that's an introduction to the supply curve. We'll see you on the next episode of No Free Lunch.